Remember when I came across that episode of Horseland known as house sitting? That episode traumatized me to the point where I didn't sleep for a night. But here's an episode that was a bit more insane than that one. It was Valentine's Day and I had the day off from community base. I had a doctor's appointment because my dad thought I was having some breathing problems. During the appointment, I was also getting a blood test. After the appointment, my dad and I headed out. But as I expected, I stepped on a cardboard box. It had no name on it like always. I figured I should just wait till I get home to view what was in it. When we got home from stopping halfway to the Safeway, I took the box to my room and proceeded to open it. What was inside it? A Horseland DVD. The cover consists of Sarah Whitney, along with the horses like Scarlet, Button, Chili, Calypso, and Pepper on the end in the entire green background. The DVD was called Horseland Fast Friends and Other Episodes. I was just really glad to see a rare DVD of Horseland, but there was a problem. What if there was an lost episode of it on it? I inserted the DVD into my PlayStation 4 and sat back. It opened up with some previews for the DVDs of Busy Town Mysteries, The Doodle Bop, and Mona the Vampire. As soon as the previews ended, it took me to the menu. The menu, in my opinion, was nothing special, just as a screenshot of Molly comforting Shep from the episode Fast Friends. The options of the episode on the DVD were Play All, Episode Selection, and Setup. I sat through the first 4 episodes, Fast Friends, Pepper's Pain, Bailey's New Friend, and The Competition. All of them are good, but oh boy, I was right about there being a lost episode on the DVD. A warning came up before the episode began like always. The following episode of Horseland is a follow-up to House Sitting, which was made by Rudy Wilcox, who was also fired from Cookie Jar Entertainment in 2007. The episode contains blood, gore, disturbing images, and murder. It must be not viewed by anyone under the age of 18. Viewer discretion as advised. Well, if this is a follow-up, then why was Sarah Whitney on the cover of the DVD? I questioned. I shrugged it off and decided to sit through the episode anyway. The intro came on, except it had a massive change. Sarah Whitney's scenes were entirely cut from the intro, given that she died in house sitting, and instead was replaced by clips of other Horseland episodes. It then showed what would happen in today's episode. A voice that sounded like Will said, "Today on Horseland, following the events of Sarah Whitney's death, Bailey and the gang want to know what killed Sarah. But as it turns out, it's a life or death situation when Bailey and his friends come face to face with a mysterious creature. Will anyone survive?" The episode started with a shot of Molly Washington's house. The title of the episode was called The Aftermath. Shep then walked into the view and looked at the camera and he said, "This here is the house of Molly Washington. Sarah was in the middle of house sitting when she was murdered that night by a mysterious creature." It then showed a flashback of what happened in the previous episode, mainly the same events of what happened to Sarah during the flashback. I saw what looked like a pair of human bones, presumably Sarah's. Without Sarah, Scarlet is questioning on who will be her new horse rider, Shep said. The scene then cut to the funeral. The remaining Horseland kids, including Molly, Bailey, Will, Chloe, Zoe, and Alma, were the hosts of the funeral. As I stared at the audience at the funeral, I could see Jasmine and Amber, Molly's friends. I could also see Nani, a girl who wasn't introduced until either Season 2 or Season 3. The funeral then started. Bailey went up to the microphone and said, "Thank you all for coming. You may have heard about the death of Sarah Whitney. My close friend, I don't even know what kind of creature killed her, but whatever did this to her, I hope it... Bailey tried to finish his sentence, but he couldn't hold his sadness anymore and began crying. His cousin Will began to comfort him, saying it was going to be okay, and said that he's seen death before. Eventually, all the kids from Horseland, excluding Will, began crying because of how sad Sarah's death had been for them. It then showed the barn where Shep and the other animals were. Scarlet was lying down in her stall feeling sad. "Scarlet, are you okay? You haven't been talking much," Shep asked. "No, I'm upset about Sarah's death. Without her, I'll likely never have another horse rider," Scarlet replied. "I know how you feel. Someday someone will take Sarah's role as a new rider," Shep said. "You think?" Scarlet asked. "Yes, I'm positive," Shep replied. He then put his arm around Scarlet's neck as a way of comforting her. Meanwhile, Chloe was watering the grass until Molly arrived. Bailey has invited us all to a meeting at the restaurant nearby, Molly said. Okay, let me just finish watering the grass and then I'll come along, Chloe replied. It then showed the restaurant where Bailey, Molly, Will, Chloe, and Zoe and Alma were eating pizza with pepperoni on it. Bailey proceeded to go over his plan. The plan was to get involved in Molly's place at night to see if the creature will come back. Chloe decided to help out by saying that the way to get back at the creature is to fight it with weaponry. Bailey, Chloe, this idea sounds dangerous. What if someone in this group gets killed by the monster in the process? Will asked. Bailey will then said they'll be alright and that they'll all stick together. Will then sighed and then cut back to the barn. So it sounds like the remaining kids of Horseland were going to try and kill the monster, Angora said. I got confused at this point, because of how did Angora heard the conversation? Oh well, it's animation. They are? Well, let's hope they can revive Sarah in the process, Scarlet said. The other horses looked at Sarah in confusion, and Aztec to see her. Scarlet, Sarah's gone. There's no way to revive her. I agree with Aztec. That's one of the most stupidest things I've heard of you. She's dead, and she's going to stay dead. Now get it over with, you mindless horse, Angora said to Scarlet. Scarlet then began shedding her tears as she officially began crying. She couldn't believe that Angora would say such a thing that was awful. Shep then confronted Angora again, telling her what she said was rude and disrespectful. Angora then decided to issue an apology to Scarlet of what she had said. Meanwhile, it showed Molly's house again, except it was nighttime in the scene. Molly, are your parents home? Bailey asked. In all honesty, my parents went out somewhere, but they didn't say where. But they said we can go in the house if you want to, Molly said. Then they went inside the house and proceeded to set up a camp inside the living room, using the blankets and pillows. Will then asked the group if they last remembered to bring some, weapons. Chloe said that they sure did, and after that Bailey turned off the lights and in the living room, and I figured it would be a good idea to tell spooky stories before bedtime. The whole gang agreed, and they did so. The screen faded to black, and the time title card popping up saying 3 hours later. While staring at the title card, the question came up in my head. How did the creature enter the house in the last episode? Meanwhile, it just showed outside of Molly's house again, but just then the creature showed up and bust down the front door very hard. That may have explained the question. But anyway, this woke up Chloe and Zoe, and they waited for the footsteps to be gone when they woke up the gang very quietly. What's going on? Molly asked in a tired tone. Chloe and I think there's heard some creature came in, Zoe replied, softly whispering. Okay, everyone, now would be a good time to get out your weapons. But we have to do it very quietly now, Will said, also softly whispering. Bailey and the gang got their weapons and proceeded to find the creature. Alma, Will, and Molly decided to look upstairs while Chloe and Zoe and Bailey searched downstairs. Upstairs, Alma looked to see if the creature by any chance went into Molly's room. She quietly opened the door, and without a doubt, the monster was in fact in Molly's bedroom. Alma gasped, but her expression changed from scared to angry. I got you, you son of a bitch! Alma shouted. I was quite shocked to hear Alma swear in the episode, but it continued on anyway. Will and Molly heard this too, and Will shouted, Alma, no! Alma then used a pistol as her main weapon and shot the monster in the face about 3 times. The monster then pushed Alma to the floor and took the pistol out of Alma's hands and then proceeded to eat her on screen. As this happened, Alma let out a blood-curdling scream that was somehow loud for my ears. I was shocked by this scene, mainly because Alma's legs were eaten off and so was her heart. Will and Molly got in the bedroom, but they were too late. How dare you! You murdered my friend! Hell, you look like a silhouette, Wendigo, Will said. I agree with Will. Not only you did kill Alma, but you murdered Sarah as well, Molly shouted. The silhouette Wendigo let out a demonic roar, scaring both Molly and Will as they dropped their weapons in a scared manner. The main two then began to run away from the creature. When they got to the stairs, they tripped on their way down. Molly and Will tried to get up, but they couldn't. Well, Molly, if this is the part where we die, I hope we see each other in heaven, Will said. The Wendigo then proceeded to come down the stairs, making Molly gasp. Eventually, Molly was the first one on the staircase to be killed. She got brutally stomped on the head, making blood splattered everywhere. I was also shocked by this scene, considering that there was blood being shown. After that, the Wendigo then began to choke Will, using its leg. Before Will could even be killed, Bailey shouted, "Hey, that's my cousin you're murdering! Let him go!" The monster then let out the same roar, but Bailey, Chloe, and Zoe did not drop their weapons that time. The Wendigo then picked up Will and ripped his head off. Rather than being sad that his cousin got killed, he was extremely angry. "Go run and hide! I'll hold it off!" Bailey said to Chloe and Zoe. The twins did as they said so and run, and Bailey then stabbed the creature a few times in the chest. While going up the stairs, the Wendigo then got a hold of Bailey and then threw him off the staircase. This led to Bailey dying for good. Meanwhile, Chloe and Zoe were the last two remaining. They were standing near the door, likely a way of blocking it. "I guess Bailey's not going to survive this one. Nor will we," Zoe said. "It was nice knowing you, Zoe. We're all right as twins," Chloe said. Suddenly the Wendigo made a large hole in the wall, punching it, and then hard, and grabbing Zoe by the neck. "Goodbye, Chloe," Zoe said while getting choked. By the time Zoe died, Chloe took the kitchen knife from her drawer and she began crying. Chloe told the monster to come closer and get her, but then the Wendigo burst down and the kitchen door open. She then stabbed the Wendigo in the heart a few times, but the Wendigo soon pushed her to the floor like it did with Alma. While the creature stood close to Chloe, it began to raise its leg. "Do it," Chloe said while crying in an angry manner. "Do it! I don't want to live on this godforsaken planet anymore!" Chloe's sentence was then interrupted by the Wendigo, brutally stomping on her head like it did with Molly. All the remaining kids of Horseland were officially dead. The time title card appeared this time, saying, "The next day." It then showed a bunch of police cars scattered across Molly's place. There was also a news report happening, and the news reporter said, Just in. If you think that Sarah Whitney was only murdered by the Wendigo, there has been another murder, but this time involving more people. Those people would be Molly Washington, Alma Rodriguez, Bailey Handler, Chloe and Zoe Stilton, and Will Taggart. 4 girls were around 12 years old, and while Bailey and Will were 13 and 15 respectively. Stay tuned for more updates. Suddenly Ship and Angora walked into view and saw the police cars. "Well, is this going to be hard to tell the horses?" Angora said. "Yes, very hard if you ask me," Shep said. Molly Washington's parents were in view and they were crying, likely because their daughter was murdered. The scene then cut back to black as Angora could be heard saying, "Never make encounters with a Wendigo, just don't." Then it showed the credits, and with a few changes once again. The damaged Claudia played, but it was played of an orchestra. After the credits, it showed the ending logos, except they were horror-themed. The Horseland LLC logo was in the bloody text, and there was also the word nightmares on it. The KOL logo was then in reversed, and lastly the Deke logo was all in red. It then went to a 10-second black screen after that. I was confused on why there was a black screen, unless of course there was going to be a jump scare, and sure enough there was. I was greeted with an edited shot of Sarah gasping from the Horseland episode Mosey, where she saw that the car was coming and Mosey was in the middle of the road. However, her eyes were black with no pupils, and she had blood coming out of her nose. It was accompanied by the gut-feeling, wrenching, howling scream, and a slow version of a human's blood-curdling scream. The jump scare scared the bejesus out of me, and I fell back in shock. It then took me back to the menu. I was really appalled by this point that I took the disc out of my PlayStation 4, but then got an idea of taking some shots of what I found. Soon after, I proceeded to stomp on the disc hard and threw it into the garbage. There's a whole lot of other lost episodes you'll soon come across, so if you see them, watch them at your own risk. Well, and that, my little pretties, was Horseland: The Aftermath, a Horseland creepypasta written by Ashley Armbruster, also known as Jenny Foxworth. Oops, apologies about that noise. I just dropped my glasses. Like, I was just putting them away and I just dropped my glasses. But It's not broken, for any of you guys are wondering. I just dropped it on my laptop. My final thoughts on this story? I could definitely say that this story was pretty interesting, but at the same time, there's a few, there was cliches. While I still find this to be cliche with, the DVD being found in the cardboard box randomly, the DVD, I mean, the cliches that you would find in any Lost episode DVDs were in this episode. But for some reason, I honestly can definitely say this is actually a pretty not a bad sequel to House Sitting. I'm not gonna lie, because I remember doing that Horseland house sitting story about maybe I think a few weeks ago or something, or maybe it was a month or so ago. I can't remember when I last narrated, but oh my goodness, this one was definitely a pretty good, interesting sequel that involves, the rest of the people from Horseland, who happen to be Sarah's friends, decide to go and kill the creature that killed Sarah. Unfortunately, it didn't work because the creature killed them, and that's what happened. However, though, there is an author's note, so I'm going to go ahead and read that part. This story is under any circumstances, is not a ripoff of Tubigo Studios' Teletubby story, which also has The Aftermath as the title. This story is entirely different. So I do believe the offer on that, because I could tell this is not a ripoff or anything. So yeah, that's a little disclaimer for anybody who is curious and wondering. Well, this story I could definitely say was a pretty interesting one, but at the same time, there were still some cliches in the story. I mean, I'm going to give it the offer benefit of the doubt that it's kind of hard to make a good Lost episode pasta without sitting there and repeating cliches. I mean, it's kind of hard not to really, make a good Lost episode without adding cliches or whatever. And this is kind of the reason why the creepypastas are just dying nowadays, although there's some people who manage to write something decent or good. However, the story is alright, maybe not perfect, but this story definitely was not terrible. I could definitely say it was not terrible. I definitely have to say this story was pretty decent. Not terrible, but definitely not perfect either. So, I could definitely say right now that this story was pretty interesting. I'm not gonna lie. But I can also say this one was definitely a good one. I mean, a good sequel, actually. I personally thought it was pretty neat and well made in detail. So, I guess with that being the case and with that being said, yeah, I haven't watched Horseland in a while, so I mean, it's so nice to get an episode of Horseland, like another Lost episode of Horseland, because I've been kind of wanting to do one, actually, another one. So, yeah, I could definitely say that this is actually a pretty good story. So anyways, I guess with that being the case and with that being said, I'm going to sit here and, say right now that this is just simply my own personal opinion of this story, and if you disagree with me, that's fine too. We're all entitled to our own opinions regards to these creepypastas. This is just simply my own personal thoughts. Now, I want to say as well that the grammar was good most of the time. I was able to read this without any issue, although there were a couple of grammatical errors and some punctuation errors in the stories. I did notice there was a couple of punctuation errors and grammatical errors in the story, but other than that, the story was pretty readable, and I personally really liked it. So I gotta really say it's a really awesome, pretty good story. So, I mean, not perfect, but definitely a pretty good one. So I could definitely say right now, this is a pretty awesome story. Yeah, I used some of the screenshots from the episode in this, from that was in the Lost episode on the wiki was for this. So, yeah. Anyways, with that being said and that being the case, this is just my own opinion, and if you disagree with me, that's fine too. I know I repeated myself, but I just want to make it clear, this is just simply my own personal opinion. If you disagree with me, that's fine too. I'm going to give this story a 8.5 out of 10. I'm giving it an 8.5 out of 10 because even though the story was really well made in detail, it's got really good concept and stuff, I do also. Pardon me, I've been yawning a bit, so I'm a bit tired. But, um, but I also really gotta say that the interesting concept of the story was, I will admit there were cliches in the story, but I mean, I'm giving a benefit of the doubt that it's kind of hard to make a lost episode pasta without repeating any cliches. I mean, that's one of the downfalls when it comes to creepypastas nowadays. But I personally really thought this one was a pretty good story. Anyways, a bit of the grammar and the sentence structuring could be fixed up a little bit with, Google Docs or something. But other than that, this was actually not a bad sequel, but pretty good story. And I'm really hoping maybe there could be more Horseland pastas like this or something. Maybe I could read in the future, but who's really to say, really? Anyways, what did you guys personally think of this story? Did you enjoy it? Did you not? Also, what we have done personally to help make this story a lot better. Feel free to leave me know what your thoughts are down in the comments below. I will put a link to the story in the description for any of you guys who are curious and for those who want to know where the story is. I know it's on the Spin Pasta Wiki, but I will be sure to leave a link in the description so then that way you guys can go check it out. Anyways, I'm the Lion Queen. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and if you're new to my channel, feel free to leave this video a like, comment, and subscribe if you're new. Ring the bell for notifications when it uploads, that way you guys will not miss an upload. And as always, please roll the outro because I'm out.